Rudo was a slum dweller who often snuck into the junkyards of the wealthy to scavenge usable items. However, after being framed for the murder of his foster father and thrown into the massive pit where all of the world's garbage ends up, he was forced to fight monstrous creatures made from trash to climb back up and seek revenge. The world was split into two parts. On one side was the pristine city where the rich lived lavishly. On the other side were the slums, home to people like Rudo. The only constant between the two worlds was the pit, where all garbage and even criminals were discarded. The rich casually discarded even slightly damaged items without a second thought. A woman once instructed her daughter to throw away a puppy toy she had just bought because it got a minor tear. She explained that the toy would become unsightly if repaired, and they could simply buy another. The daughter readily agreed. The toy, along with other garbage, was tossed into a small vent that led to an underground tunnel, eventually carried by a truck to a vast trash collection site. Meanwhile, young Rudo was already inside that site buying up whatever the trucks delivered. He had sneaked into the facility and entered one of the rooms, but unfortunately a guard heard something and went to check. The guard burst into the room with his gun drawn, shouting at the disgusting degenerate threatening the city's beauty by hoarding trash. Rudo said nothing. He was used to hearing such insults every Tuesday. When the alarm was sounded and more guards arrived, Rudo threw garbage bags at them. The guards, being clean freaks, recoiled at the mess, especially the raw eggs splattering their uniforms. While they stood frozen, Rudo escaped up the vent. He emerged near the exit, but the gate shut in his face. More guards quickly arrived on the scene. They ordered him to stop and opened fire. Rudo cursed them, muttering how they considered him the threat. The next day, the city buzzed with news of the garbage raiders. The people on the rich side of the wall blamed the slum dwellers, while the slum residents blamed Rudo. This wasn't the first time he had broken into the trash collection sites. Most believed he would get caught eventually, and many hoped he would. But Rudo didn't care. He opened his small shop and began selling the repaired goods he had recovered. Chiwa, his friend, soon arrived and scolded him. She demanded to know why he risked so much just to scavenge city trash. Rudo explained that the rich discarded perfectly usable items without a care. He retrieved them because he felt sorry for them, and it also helped him earn some money. Chiwa seemed to understand, but just then, 3 boys arrived, holding their noses and mocking him for the smell. They warned Chiwa to stay away from him, or she would end up stinking like garbage, too. They mocked his thick, black gloves, saying they hadn't been washed since the Obama presidency and would give anyone a rash with just one touch. One of them kicked a lantern Rudo had just fixed, claiming no one would buy such junk. They insulted his hidden hands, calling them creepy, and mocked him for being the son of a murderer. That insult pushed Rudo to the brink, but he held back. The boys, however, continued, stating that the slum was built to imprison criminals and their descendants like Rudo. They insisted on keeping their reputation clean and said his father had brought them shame. Unable to tolerate it any longer, Rudo glared at them with such intensity that they fled, still shouting that he would become a murderer just like his father. Rudo quietly returned to fixing the lantern. Chiwa gently told him that she believed in him and that he wasn't like his father. Embarrassed, he was about to thank her when she noticed the puppy toy he had retrieved. Rudo had intended to gift it to her, but before he could say anything, Chiwa's mother arrived and took her away. Later, Rudo returned home to find his adoptive father, Rudo, waiting. Rudo teasingly mimicked Rudo's nervous attempt to give Chiwa the toy, making Rudo blush in embarrassment. Rudo then turned serious, asking about Rudo's recent junkyard trip. He told Rudo there was no need to push himself so hard, they weren't that desperate for money. He believed Rudo felt indebted to him for adopting him after his biological father had been thrown into the pit as a murderer, but Rudo said that wasn't the case. He saw Rudo as family and was simply doing his part. Rudo told him to be that honest with Chiwa too, causing Rudo to stumble and reopen the gunshot wound from the night before. Rudo immediately treated his injury and changed the bandages on his hands. As Rudo looked at his hands, he remembered how they had always been injured. People constantly judged him for it, and the pain often flared up unpredictably. One day, Rigtu had given him the black gloves, which mysteriously suppressed the pain. After bandaging him, Rigtu advised him to confess his feelings to Chiwa before someone else did. As they joked about it, a creepy masked figure watched them from the shadows. The next day, Rudo finally gathered the courage to confess to Chiwa and headed toward her house with the puppy toy. But along the way, he witnessed a grim scene at the edge of the slums, the pit where criminals were thrown. Another person was being executed, and Rudo could only wonder what truly happened to those cast down. Chiwa arrived beside him and remarked on the brutality of it all, startling Rudo. She expressed her fear of him being thrown into the pit one day. She admitted that while many discarded things were still valuable, risking his life for them wasn't worth it. Rudo replied that Rigtu had said the same. Chiwa told him it was because Rigtu loved him. Rudo was momentarily stunned, realizing that her words implied she cared for him too. Chiwa blushed, realizing the double meaning, but Rudo was already overwhelmed with joy. He gave her the puppy toy, saying it might be garbage to others, but he believed it would be happiest with her. To his surprise, Chiwa accepted the toy and said she would cherish it. Rudo was overjoyed. He danced all the way home, eager to brag to Rigtu. On the way, he bumped into some guards who ignored him, but he grew curious about their presence in the slums. He reached home and began excitedly telling Rigtu what had happened, only to stop in shock. Rigtu lay on the floor with a masked man standing over him, stabbing him. The killer looked at Rudo before driving the blade deeper. Rudo charged at him, but the man struck him hard, knocking him unconscious. When Rudo awoke, the masked killer was leaving, picking up a book from the floor. Rudo tried to pursue him, but stopped at the sound of Rigtu's voice. Rigtu was still alive and urged Rudo to run away. Rudo rushed to him, promising to get help, but Rigtu insisted he escape and change the rotten world they lived in. With those final words, Rigtu died, and Rudo was left in shock. Just then, guards arrived and zapped Rudo, accusing him of murder. They pinned him down, saying they caught him red-handed. Rudo protested that the real killer had just escaped, but they refused to listen and knocked him out. He was taken to the scaffold for execution. The entire slum turned out to witness his fall into the pit, along with elites from the city. The judge declared that murder was a grave crime, and despite the victim being a slum dweller, the punishment would not be lessened. He sentenced Rudo to death by being thrown into the pit, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Rudo couldn't believe what was happening. He scanned the crowd, desperately hoping someone would believe him. His eyes landed on Chiwa. He shouted to her, claiming he didn't kill Rigtu, and begged her to find the real killer. Chiwa said she had trusted him but realized he was unworthy. She accused him of being a murderer's son and dropped the puppy toy before turning away. Her betrayal devastated Rudo more than anything else. The crowd mocked him, calling him human filth deserving of the pit. Rudo screamed back, calling them the real filth, soulless, thoughtless meat. He swore he would drag them all to hell. Just then he spotted the masked murderer in the crowd. But before he could say anything, he was pushed over the edge. He felt like he was falling endlessly before finally blacking out. Fortunately, the garbage at the bottom cushioned his fall, and he woke up unharmed. He wondered how he had survived when the overwhelming stench hit him. Even Rudo, used to garbage, had to cover his face. He looked around at the vast sea of trash and strange, unfamiliar things. Suddenly, a massive shadow loomed over him. He turned to find a monstrous creature made of garbage bearing its fangs. His mind went blank for a moment. He had always wondered why society was so obsessed with sending garbage and criminals to the pit, never caring what was down there. But now he was about to find out, and it was far worse than anything he imagined. Rudo quickly snapped out of his daze and began running for his life as the gigantic monster approached. Things took a turn for the worse when the creature let out a thunderous roar, causing several more monsters to emerge from the trash piles. They all began chasing him. He ran as fast as he could, but it was all in vain. He was soon cornered. He questioned what these creatures were and whether they were truly animated piles of junk. As they lunged at him, he narrowly dodged their attacks. Trying to escape, he tripped and landed on a human skull, realizing with horror what awaited him. He cursed the ones who had thrown him into this hellish place, and at that moment, the garbage beneath him crumbled. He tumbled down to the bottom of a cliff, now separated from the monsters but exposed to another danger. The air itself was poisonous. If he breathed too much of it, it would tear apart his lungs. Desperately, he covered his mouth and nose with his gloves, hoping to find a place to recover. But then he realized a horrifying truth: there might not be a safe place at all. Hopelessness began to set in. He puked blood, and the sound drew the monsters toward him once again. Rudo collapsed, barely able to move. He was close to accepting death when a memory of Rigto's final words resurfaced in his mind. Suddenly, a strange energy surged through his hands, though he didn't notice it yet. His vision began to change, and he saw glowing lights emerging from the trash piles and from an iron pipe nearby. With new resolve, he crawled toward the pipe, determined to survive because he now had a purpose. Grabbing the pipe, he stood up and declared that he would return to the surface to get revenge on the people who had sent him here, and on the one who had sent him here, and on the one who had killed Rigto. Rage boiled within him. The monsters crept closer, sensing an opportunity. But when one of them attacked, Rudo struck it with the iron pipe without even looking, sending the monster flying. The impact sent the creature crashing into the umbrella of another pit dweller, who was surprised to see someone powerful enough to fight these monsters. Meanwhile, Rudo had entered a berserker state. He paid no mind to the poisonous air or the blood dripping from his nose. Even being slammed into giant rocks at high speed didn't stop him. One of the monsters crushed the rock he had been slammed into, burying him in rubble, but Rudo emerged from it, pulling a metal pole along. He swung the pole with full force, inflicting serious damage on one of the creatures. But then another monster suddenly emerged beneath him. Rudo managed to leap away from its jaws just in time. However, the effects of the toxic air finally caught up to him. He began coughing up blood again, giving the monsters another opening to strike. Just then, the mysterious power in his hands awakened again, granting him the strength and fury to remain standing as two monsters attacked him simultaneously. Rudo survived the impact and used a metal sheet as a blade to slash the skull of the first monster. He then spun around and cleaved the second one in half, causing it to explode. He paused briefly to catch his breath, but another massive monster approached. Upon seeing it, Rudo tried to flee to recover, but the creature stomped the ground, sending out a powerful shockwave that launched him into the air. As he landed, Rudo was stunned to see a man wearing a creepy mask standing over him. He wondered who this person was and how he had appeared so suddenly. The masked man lifted Rudo and kicked him forward, coughing blood. Rudo prepared to fight back, but the man placed a gas mask over his face, allowing him to breathe again. Completely confused, Rudo asked the stranger if he was a local. He demanded to know where they were and what the monsters were, but the masked man shushed him. Still, Rudo continued asking questions loudly. The masked man hissed for him to stay quiet again, but Rudo, oblivious, pressed for more information, wondering if they were underground. The man finally lost his patience. He shouted that they were not underground, but above the surface. He explained that the ones living above had turned this place into a hellhole. He told Rudo that the trash monsters were drawn to sound, and thanks to his shouting, they had now been noticed. He added that normal weapons couldn't kill the beasts, and that sneaking away silently had been their only option, but now it was too late. As one of the creatures approached from behind, the masked man readied himself. Golden energy pulsed from his arm and wrapped around his umbrella, transforming it into a weapon. When the monster attacked, he twirled the umbrella at its face like a spinning blender, tearing it apart. The shredded pieces of the creature fell and disintegrated into dust. Rudo was already astonished by the strange power, but he was even more shocked that the monster didn't regenerate afterward. A massive horde of monsters then arrived, but the masked man remained calm. He charged into battle, slicing through the creatures with his bladed umbrella. He leapt into the air using the umbrella as a parachute. Rudo wondered if this power came from the technology used by locals of this strange land, or if it was something unique to the man. As he hovered in front of the last remaining giant monster, the beast spat an acid ball at him. The masked man blocked it with his umbrella, scattering the acid, which exploded violently upon hitting nearby garbage. Using the monster's head as a platform, the man jumped even higher into the air. He poured more energy into his umbrella, increasing its size and destructive force. He dived back down, slicing through the monster's head and the ground beneath it. After the fight, he returned to Rudo, who asked who he was. The man removed his mask and introduced himself as In-Jin, a simple cleaner. But within seconds, Rudo did something to make him regret removing the mask. In-Jin cursed Rudo for making him take it off, and then Rudo suddenly collapsed. While unconscious, Rudo dreamed of a memory from childhood. He had come home after being bullied and pushed into a sewer by other kids for claiming that objects had souls. Rudo had asked him if he hit the boys back. Rudo said he hadn't. He then asked Rudo if it was true that objects would gain a soul if treated with care. While cleaning Rudo admitted that it was just an old tale meant to make people appreciate their possessions, but he personally liked to believe it. This fascinated Rudo, who asked if the items around their house had souls too, including his gloves. Rudo said that if he cherished them, they just might. Rudo woke up from the dream to find himself chained and being dragged by In-Jin. He cursed at him, demanding to be freed, but In-Jin replied that he was taking him somewhere safe. Rudo didn't care. He only wanted to return to the surface and get revenge. His words made In-Jin stop. In-Jin told him that returning to the surface, or the sphere as they called it, was impossible. He explained that the sphere was high in the sky and constantly in motion. Then he resumed dragging Rudo, advising him to accept reality. But Rudo refused to give up. He insisted he would return to the sphere no matter what. He accused In-Jin of knowing a way back and threatened to keep shouting until monsters appeared. In-Jin, growing frustrated, promised to show him exactly what kind of place this was. He dragged Rudo more roughly until they reached a clearing in a canyon, noticeably cleaner than anywhere else. There, In-Jin dropped Rudo and left him. Rudo shouted after him to at least remove the chains, but In-Jin walked away silently. Soon, a group of men wearing gas masks emerged from nearby trucks. They approached Rudo, who wondered if they were the locals. The men were curious about him, judging from his clothes, and asked if he was from the sphere. Rudo nervously replied that he had fallen from there. The men suddenly ripped off their masks, thrilled to find a living spherite. They explained that they'd only ever found dead ones before. Excited, they examined Rudo's face, overwhelming him, and he backed away. They claimed they meant no harm and started untying him, making Rudo think they were nicer than In-Jin, but it was all a trap. Rudo was soon bound tightly again inside a truck. He had no idea what was happening. Outside, the men talked excitedly about how lucky they were to find a living spherite. They were worth a fortune. Dead spherites' body parts and clothes already sold for high prices, but a living one was extremely rare. Their leader explained that people hated the spherites. He accused those in the sphere of dumping waste on the planet until it poisoned the air and created monsters. He said people who lost loved ones or their homes harbored deep hatred for the spherites and would be eager to torture a live one. To welcome Rudo, the man offered him a meal, rotten meat, and spoiled food. Mocking him, he claimed spherites didn't even touch trash and couldn't digest such filth. But as he attempted to shove the food into Rudo's mouth, he made the mistake of his life. Rudo bit into his fingers, tearing the flesh and chewing it along with the rotten food. He declared that the food was still edible and not trash. The men were horrified, never having seen a beast like him, but that was just the beginning. Rudo was furious with the world for deciding what was trash and what wasn't. He refused to accept it anymore. His power surged again, and he broke free from the chains. He jumped out of the truck and released energy into the ground, lifting nearby objects. In-Jin, watching from a distance, was pleased. He confirmed that Rudo was a giver, someone who could grant life to objects and awaken their hidden power. Rudo recalled Rigto's words that if objects are treated with care, they care for their humans too. Rudo threw off his mask, grabbed the chain that had bound him, and infused it with life, turning it into a weapon. The men charged at him, but Rudo struck the ground, forcing them to retreat. Their leader shouted to target the chain, claiming that a giver was useless without their object. The men succeeded in knocking the chain from his hand. But to everyone's shock and in Jin's delight, Rudo picked up a tire and turned that into a weapon as well. Even among powerful givers, such adaptability was rare. Rudo made quick work of the men, then moved on to their leader, who panicked and hurled curses at him. Just as Rudo was about to finish him, Jin appeared and stopped him. Rudo snapped out of his frenzy and his power faded. The tire disintegrated and Rudo suffered a nosebleed, confused about what he had just done. Jin said that reckless use of such power would strain his body. He apologized for testing Rudo, but admitted he had needed to confirm his abilities. Jin promised to explain everything about the world and the power of givers, but only if Rudo agreed to join the cleaners. They needed warriors like him to fight the trash monsters. But Rudo was overwhelmed. He said he wasn't interested in joining anyone. And that is where the video ended. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.